Have you ever wanted to build an argument that's not just, logical, but actually persuasive? Well, today we're going to unlock a really powerful technique from the book La Forma dell'Ensayo that does exactly that.
I mean, really think about it for a second. It's one thing to just state your case, right? To lay out all the facts. But it is something else entirely to actually guide your audience's mind to get them to arrive at your conclusion feeling like they came up with it themselves. Now that's the difference between just talking and actually persuading someone. All right, so let's dive right in. The tool we're breaking down today is called the enthymeme of more and less. Now, I know, it sounds a little academic, a little complex, maybe, but trust me, its real power is just how simple it is. So stick with me, and I promise, by the end of this, you'll be able to spot it, understand it, and even use it yourself. Okay, but before we jump into the whole more and less thing, we've got to understand that first word, enthymeme. To really master this specific technique, we first have to get a handle on the general concept it's built on. So what exactly is it? Well, you can think of an enthymeme as a kind of shorthand for an argument. It's like it intentionally leaves out one piece of the logical puzzle. Why? Because it trusts that you, the audience, are smart enough to fill in the blank. It's almost like a collaboration between the writer and the reader. And this comparison right here, it just shows you the difference so clearly. I mean, look at the full syllogism on the left. Sure, it's logical, but it's also kind of clunky, right? A bit robotic. Now look at the enthymeme on the right. It's concise, it's elegant, and it respects our intelligence by not spelling out the obvious. It just gets straight to the point with so much more force and clarity. Okay, so now let's see how this idea builds into the specific technique we're talking about today. The enthymeme of more and less works by creating a super simple but really powerful comparison. And honestly, once you see this pattern, you're going to start noticing it everywhere. All right, here's our first example. We start with a premise that pretty much everyone would agree with, right? Copying on a homework assignment is irresponsible. Okay, the argument then just scales that idea up. If the first part is true, well then the second part has to be even more true. The logic is just, bam, instantly clear. Let's try another one. If it's difficult to lift 20 kilos, what about 50? Well, obviously it's going to be more difficult. The argument doesn't need some complex, drawn-out proof. The comparison itself does all the heavy lifting. Yeah, pun intended. It's just so simple, so intuitive, and it's really, really hard to argue with. Okay, one more, just to make sure this really sinks in. That feeling of losing $100? Ouch. We can all imagine that, right? The argument uses that shared, relatable feeling as a launch pad to make a much bigger, more impactful point. And see, this is a perfect illustration of how the whole thing works. It builds on a premise we all already agree on. But wait, this isn't just a one-trick pony. The exact same powerful logic can be totally flipped on its head to argue from a position of less so. And this is where this little rhetorical tool becomes incredibly versatile. Just look at this one. We start by establishing a really high bar. An expert couldn't solve the problem. Okay, from that point on, the conclusion is pretty much inescapable, isn't it? I mean, if the most qualified person failed, it's, what, highly unlikely a beginner is going to succeed? The argument is made by scaling down. And here we go again, same pattern. We start with the big one. Strong, solid evidence wasn't enough to convince the judge. So when you compare that to a minor thing, a simple rumor, the conclusion just feels self-evident. And what's great is you don't even have to explain why the rumor is weaker. The structure of the sentence does all the work for you. And for our last example, let's look at this. We see a professional athlete, someone at the absolute peak of their physical ability, fail to handle a certain load. The argument, then, just invites us to think about someone without any of that training. The conclusion? It's immediate, and it's powerful. So you see, the really crucial thing to remember here is that this structure works beautifully in both directions, more so and less so. Okay, so we've seen how it works, but the real question is, why is it so effective? I mean, why does this super simple structure often feel way more persuasive than some long, detailed explanation? Well, the secret is all about what it doesn't say. This right here, this is the key. By not spelling every single thing out, the enthymeme actually invites the reader into the argument. Your mind is the one that fills in the blank, connects the dots, and reconstructs the logic. And because you actively participated in creating that conclusion, you're way more likely to accept it. It's brilliant, really. It doesn't just throw an idea at you, it guides your own intelligence to get there. So, let's break this down into a simple, practical exercise you can do to build this skill on your own. It's just 3 steps. First, start with a simple, believable statement. That's your premise. Second, apply that comparison of degree. Scale it up with more or down with less. And third, and this is probably the most important part, just stop. Let the structure do the heavy lifting and allow your reader to make that final leap all on their own. You know, mastering a simple yet really profound tool like this, it's a huge first step toward developing real autonomy as a writer. This is exactly the kind of exercise that takes you from just following a set of rules to independently crafting your own arguments that have some real impact. And by the way, this entire lesson comes from the fantastic book La Forma del Ensayo by Ray Luna Rodriguez. It's designed to be a super practical guide for students, for teachers, really for anyone who just wants to argue better. It's absolutely filled with these kinds of powerful rhetorical tools and exercises that are all designed to help you learn to write with precision, force, and just undeniable clarity. Okay, so now it's your turn. Think about a simple point you want to make, or maybe an argument you really need to win. How could you reframe it using this logic of more or less? Go on, give it some thought. What's the very first argument you're going to transform with this powerful new technique?